Hello, and welcome back to the BFA Baby podcast. As always, I'm your host, Taylor Hardman, and I welcome you to the Season 2 finale. As we've seen in the first season, our finale episode, the 20th episode, is always a look back episode. I'll give you some behind the scenes of when we filmed it, what was going on, and kind of just a recap of what the season looked like. I am so excited and thrilled with the direction that this season has been going. I actually filmed it all before it even started coming out. It's May 6th right now, and the first episode drops on May 22nd. So I am very excited to see the reaction. I'm kind of talking about it in the future tense, not really knowing quite how it's going to pan out. But I have big dreams, big goals for the pod, so I think this is our best season yet. I think, we really branched out, we tried some different things, and I'm excited to see what sticks, what resonates, what doesn't, and how we can grow and change and adapt for the upcoming third season. So let's hop right in. Episode 1, we started off in the best way possible. We started off with an interview with Goldie Jane of the Lazy Ballerina Club, and the first episode of the season is titled Wanting It Bad Enough, The Feeling of Performing in Game Shows with Goldie Jane. And when I do these interview episodes, I always name the episode 2 serious things we talk about and 1 silly thing that comes up. So you'll notice that throughout the interview episodes, how I title them a little bit differently to kind of encompass all facets of the conversation that we have. So I knew I wanted Goldie on the podcast. She was the first person that I reached out to when I wanted to get some more interviews on the podcast for season 2. And Goldie and I have had this long-standing Instagram friendship. I found Lazy Ballerina Club at a time in my life where, and I think we talk about it in the episode, where I was kind of I knew that I was going to go into this as a career, but I was really struggling with, knowing that, I could stop and taking my health seriously. I was sick a lot, and I was really just trying to kind of balance what it meant to be a healthy dancer. And the Lazy Ballerina Club is a really big platform for, being a healthy, well-rounded, work-life balance performer. And that was something really important to me. So I found it the perfect time, and everything she says just speaks to me. And she was just the best first guest, and I loved having her on the podcast. She's so full of light, so full of knowledge, and just has so many good points from so many perspectives. She was a former professional, now she teaches. Dance is still a big part of her life. And she's very big on the it's not that serious mentality, which is something I'm really trying to get into. It's life. Have fun. Adapt. It's not that serious. And she's just such a woman that I look up to and respect, not even exclusively in dancing. Of course I do. She's extremely talented, and I want to be Goldie Jane when I grow up. But also just as a woman navigating love and her career and doing all of it elegantly and flawlessly. And she's a real life example of you can have everything. You can have the dream career, you can have the love of your life, you can have a good work-life balance, you can take things seriously, but you can also balance having a lot of fun. And I just look up to her as a model human so much, and I was so happy that she came on the podcast. So yeah, it was a really great season opener, and we did talk about game shows. Her dad hosts game shows, which I had no idea. That was a silly little turn that the conversation took. But yeah, I really loved having Goldie on the pod, so great opener to the season. Season 2, episode 2 is called Listen to This Episode with Your Parents, and this was another one of the top things that I wanted on this season, so I got it real nice and early, and I basically took a whole bunch of disciplines you can get your BFA in. Let me see if I can find the note, because I keep all of my notes. So let me see if I can find the note where I wrote this. I don't know if I still have it. I think it was, oh, I do have it, okay. So we talked about your BFA in dance, your BFA in theater, your BFA in music, music performance, music education, your BFA in musical theater as well, and then we kind of broke it down into like a money conversation. And I was really big on this episode because if you're anything like me, and hopefully you are because that's who this podcast is for, it's a love letter to my high school self, but also the future artists that are coming in after me. I had parents that are like, you're never gonna make money with that. What do you do with a dance degree? It's useless, blah, 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 blah. And there's so many options, especially now with the rise of social media, especially now with, I think I talk about it in the episode, but you watched a dance movie last summer. Barbie was a dance movie. What else did we have? We had Barbie was a big dance movie. Barbie is the biggest one that I can think of off the top of my head right now. But dancing and choreography is so impactful, and theater is so impactful, and music and the arts are so critical. And even though it may seem like the arts are dying, the arts have more of an avenue to thrive now with, like I said, the increase of social media. Like, creative people are desirable and creative people are wanted in their fields, and there's so many opportunities besides just performing, that like jobs that you can have with your BFA. And it was really important to me that I took the time and I made this episode and I really broke it down to like jobs you can get, ways to work with your money, like you can live this life and not starve. And it was really something I wanted to get across to my listeners. Hopefully they do listen to it with their parents, and it's like, you're not just setting your kid out on a pipe dream. Like, your kid wants it, they're going to work their ass off for it, they're going to be good at it, and there's ways to succeed doing it. So definitely listen to this episode with your parents as a top one. Episode 3, what kind of classes do you take as a dance major? This was a question I was getting a lot on my TikTok, and I was like, let's just talk about it on the podcast, because then I can like cross promote the podcast on TikTok. It was a whole thing. I believe in this episode, I go through every single semester that I have completed in school, and I talk about classes that I have taken, that I have to take, that I will take, and how they all work together for my dance major. I think that a common misconception about being a dance major is that, and I probably say something along these lines in the episode, but I think a common misconception about being a dance major is that you don't do anything, which is absolutely not true. You're in class, you're in rehearsals, you're cross-training, it's a lot. And also, you're still taking the general education classes that everyone else is taking. You have to have a minor or a double major. You're doing a whole bunch of stuff. It just might look a little different than, like, a nursing major. Essentially, you're working out for 60, 70 hours a week. Like, you're working out as a full-time job. Dance is very physical. But yeah, the kind of classes you take as a dance major is kind of up in the air. And obviously, I wanted to shed light on, like, yes, you're taking ballet and tap and jazz and pedagogy and choreography, but you're also taking lighting and costuming, and you're acting, and you're, what else did I do that was kind of fun? I took, we took a music class, There's so many other facets and things and sides that you learn. When being a dance major, you learn so much, so I kind of wanted to shed light on the fact that you're learning a whole bunch as you're doing it. Episode 4, this one's also close to my heart, both sides of the coin, the tortured artist trope. If you know me, you know that I am a sucker for the tortured artist archetype. You know that I am an absolute sucker for it, and let me think of some times. The Novice on Netflix, The Bear on Hulu, Damien Chazelle's Whiplash, Damien Chazelle's Babylon, Black Swan. Those are kind of the really top ones. Whiplash, Black Swan, The Novice. I consider The Bear to be like a tortured artist story. I just love them. And I love them, but there is a damage to them. Like I said in the title, it is kind of a two-sided coin, a double-edged sword, if you will. There is a layer of nuance there, it begs the question, do you have to be tortured to be a good artist? And that's something that I've really wrestled with, especially like really taking steps in my career. I've really wrestled with, do you have to be tortured to be a good artist? Do you have to always pull from these really dark, moody places? Do you always have to be, you know, working yourself to the bone? Do you always have to be like on your deathbed for good art? And it's something that I'm still kind of on the fence about. And I just, like, obviously the answer is no. You don't have to, you do not have to die for your art. But sometimes it feels like that. And that sounds really dramatic, but like it's true. Sometimes it feels like if you're not dying for your art, like we talked about in the Goldie interview, you don't want it bad enough, or something super dramatic like that. And it's something I've really wrestled with, the idea of like being a tortured artist. And again, its prevalence in film, in television, it kind of pushes that narrative to the general public who maybe aren't artists and don't know what that like inner work looks like. And I feel like with that, like, I'm just flinging hair ties all over the place. With that like inner monologue of like not knowing how it really feels to be an artist in that position, or feel like you have to be, tortured to be the best, it's a real struggle. And I really kind of wanted this episode to be a conversation. There's a couple of these episodes in the season that I was like, I'm making this to be a conversation. And I really wanted it to be a conversation. And just kind of what we thought about it. And I think that, again, like there's two sides, it's a little nuanced, like, do you have to be tortured to be a good artist? Why are we so drawn to this trope in media? What is it about ourselves that we see in this trope? All kinds of things. It was a really fun episode and something close to my heart. So I really did enjoy that episode. I believe we are on episode 5? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, we're on episode 5. Episode 5 is Addiction, Abuse, and Artists. And this episode marked a really important time in the podcast for me, as obviously the host, as the main speaker. It really was a turning point because this was a fully researched, fully scripted, very intense podcast episode. So usually you'll see me on the podcast and I'll have notes on my phone, but I'll kind of, use them to keep me on track, but I'll kind of like ad-lib and add stuff in the middle and everything. And this episode was intensely researched. I really wanted to focus on, real artists, real experiences and stories, and this was a fully scripted episode. I was reading off the script. I was lightly ad-libbing. It was just a very important episode for me, and it was something I've been wanting to talk about since season 1, but I never quite knew how to approach it. And again, it ties back to that tortured artist, because there's always, you get to that point and there's always... Not always, because I'm thinking about Whiplash, and it doesn't get to that truly in Whiplash, but a lot of the times with, like, the tortured artist archetype, you get that substance abuse scene, and, you get that, like, the crazy things we do to be the best, and, it's something that's real, and it's a real danger to see it within that trope, and it's just such a real experience that impacts so many people, and I think disproportionately impacts artists in a way that like more artists are drawn to it. And I think it is, addiction and substance abuse, and I think it's such like a commonplace thing in the arts, especially in the performing arts. And I just kind of, it was on my heart that I wanted to speak about it. I wanted to speak about it in relation to the previous episode. I wanted to speak about it, and I fully scripted it, and I put a lot of heart into that episode, and I feel very proud of it. And that was another episode where I really just wanted to open the door to a conversation. This is another like conversational episode that I really want it to be. I want that episode to be a conversation. I want it to spark conversations with you and your friends. I want to converse with you guys about it. Like thoughts and feelings and experiences. It's so different person to person. And I think I even talk about my own choice of being sober. Like I choose to lead a sober life. And I think I talk about that in the episode as well. But there was just a lot to that episode and a lot of emotion. It's a very intense one. But, and I think I think it was just kind of a turning point for the podcast. Like we can do the fun interviews, we can do the motivation, the dream chasing motivation, but we can also talk about serious things that happen in our industry. And recovery is possible if you're listening. Recovery is possible. Next episode, I stopped counting. Changing majors, stigmas in the arts, and pickles with Jackie. Oh gosh, I know I said her name correct. Jackie Marotta? I know that I say it right in the episode because I asked her before we started rolling. I was like, how do you pronounce your last name? I believe it's Jackie Marotta? I'm pulling up the episode so I can pronounce it correctly. However, Jackie was our very first musician on the podcast, and it was really important to me to start getting more art perspectives on the podcast, and she is a musician. She's a saxophone player, and I had been following her on TikTok for a while. I just thought her content was really relatable and funny, and we talk about it a lot in the episode, and she made the choice to change her major, and that's something with a lot of stigma in the arts, like we talked about, and again, wanting it bad enough, and like that change. Let me get her name. Hello, and welcome back to the BFA Baby podcast. As always, I'm your host, Taylor Hartman, and we have a very special guest here with us today, Jackie Marotta. She is our Jackie Marotta, my girl. She's awesome. But I really wanted a perspective of other majors, and I also wanted the perspective of someone who might have changed their major from something in the arts. And it was kind of just this perfect storm that I found both of those in Jackie, and she's very sweet, she's very relatable, she's very kind, and I loved getting to talk to her. And I think that is something really important because there are times like getting your BFA in anything is hard. And there are going to be times where you're questioning, like, is this for me? Should I be doing this? Etc., etc. And it is hard and it is challenging. And this episode was a really big motivator, I think, for me to put out because I want people to know that it's okay if your dreams change. You can still love your art. You can still love the thing and, pursue it at a different path. And I think Jackie is a beautiful, elegant example of that, and she just really, really eloquently told her story, and I really appreciated it. It was just a lovely episode, and we talked about pickles. She loves pickles. We talked about pickles and Taylor Swift. Went very well. So there are a lot of good lessons in there, and I just felt very honored that she felt comfortable sharing her full story with me and you guys on the podcast, and I just think that she's very eloquent and very well spoken and very reassuring. I think that she knows herself very well, and I think that she knows that she is making the right decisions for herself, and I just when you meet someone, you're like, they're going to be successful. Like, no matter what they do, they're going to be successful. That's how I totally feel about Jackie. I think she's going to be undoubtedly very successful in whatever path that she takes. Next, another interview. We have the benefits of arts education, social justice, and hill turn TikTok with Samantha Parr. We talk about this on the pod, but Samantha and I have been kind of online buddies since COVID. When we were still in high school, she ran a non-for-profit online community called Dancer for Dancer, and it worked to connect dancers through, the hard time, the pandemic, when things were changing and everything was uncertain. And it kind of blossomed into a conversation of talking about injustices in the arts and things we can do to make the dance community better and healthier. And I was actually a Dancer for Dancer ambassador. I worked on their social media. I did like promotional stuff. I wrote things for them. I really, really love Sam and what she's done. And kind of like with Jackie, Sam is, a different perspective. She grew up dancing. It was very serious. She still loves it. But she chose a different collegiate path. She's doing, I believe, political science. She worked at the Capitol, like with Hill Turn TikTok. She worked on Capitol Hill. And she's absolutely like chasing her dream. She wants to be a lawyer, and a big talk of this episode was like how even if you don't choose to pursue the arts as a career, how growing up in the arts and taking it very seriously, how that can still benefit you as an adult in a totally different career path, and how all these things are still helping her. And it was just another really great perspective that I knew I wanted Sam on the podcast because, her relationship with dance and the arts and her career is very different than mine, but it's still important for people to hear. And, I think it's a really good episode, if you are between, do I really want to pursue my BFA? Do I really want to do this? Is this the right career path for me? Do I have other interests? And I think this is a really good episode for those people to like, you can still, kind of like with Jackie, you can still love the arts. It still has so many benefits for you, even if you don't professionally pursue it. It still has so many benefits, and you didn't like waste all that time and money and everything like growing up in the arts. Like, there's still so many benefits for you. And Samantha is just such an inspiring person, inspiring woman, and I just feel so excited that like that's my generation. Like, Samantha Parr is in my generation, my exact like age of women. Like, we are gonna change the world together, and I'm so blessed to call her a friend. She is such a badass. She's so cool. Next episode, Tay's Declassified Tech Week Survival Guide. I believe I talk about two things in the episode. I talk about my Tech Week survival tips, very important, but I also talk about the prevalence of rewatch podcasts, which Scott Kramer, if you don't watch him on YouTube, he's hilarious. I love Scott. Scott Kramer made a video about rewatch podcasts, and I guess that I had watched it recently or something, because I remember going in this episode being like, I'm going to talk about the Ned's Declassified Rewatch podcast, and I think that I do. And on a side note, it is a dream of mine that if I ever book something, some big project, an acting project, I hope that one day I'm on a rewatch podcast. There, I said it. I hope that one day I'm on a rewatch podcast or something. And maybe maybe in like 40 years, when I'm 60 years old, maybe I'll have like a BFA Baby rewatch podcast. It's like the BFA Baby podcast re-listen podcast. And I like just talk about how I've learned more since being 20, because I'll be 60 at the time. But this was a fun episode, a nice little short, sweet one. And yeah, it was just some Tech Week survival tips. I was 7-9 is when it's coming out. I don't know when I filmed this. I believe I was headed into, well, no, because it had to have been in March when I filmed this, because the making of my dance film comes a little later, and that was the middle of April. So I think late March, early April when I filmed this. But yeah, so Tech Week survival tips kind of goes for everyone, whether it's your first Tech Week in high school or your 70 millionth Tech Week when you're in college. I think that, every single Tech Week I do, I learn a little bit more on how to do it more successfully and do it more healthily and take care of myself better. And every Tech Week also looks different. So just kind of tips and tricks that have helped me, and I think are just beneficial to any performer that is headed into a tech. So Tay's Declassified Tech Week Survival Guide. Next episode is Showmances, Shakespeare, and the Strictly Come Dancing Tour. This was a really fun episode. I had this idea to do a spoof on the Wired autocomplete interview. And if you don't know, Wired is like an entertainment news I guess corporation, and they do this thing on YouTube called the autocomplete interview, and they hand celebrities poster boards, and they have screenshots of the Google questions. So like, why is Margot Robbie? And then she peels off the question and answers it. And I thought that it would be fun to do one of those. I toyed with the idea of doing one for my YouTube, and then stuff got crazy, and I was like, well, I'm already sitting down to film a podcast, and I don't know what to film this week, and I don't have time to also film a YouTube video, so I'm just going to make that the podcast episode. So I did one about dancers, one about... It's like dancers and actors, I think I do in this episode. And, dude, stuff gets so crazy. I think we obviously talk about the Strictly Come Dancing tour, because a lot of the questions when you know, you're Googling about professional dancers, it's like, who's on the Strictly Come Dancing tour? And I was like, a lot of Strictly Come Dancing content is happening currently, I suppose. Yeah, we talk about actors, we talk about on-stage and on-screen chemistry. I believe there's a conversation about leg warmers in there. There's some talk about Shakespeare, obviously, from the title. This was a really fun episode to film, and I had a lot of fun. I think maybe I'll do a slightly different version for the YouTube, maybe, and I'll have the little whiteboard, like, wired. But it was a really fun, kind of more gamey episode to film, and I thought it's entertaining and educational, which I really hope for this podcast to be, and that one was super fun to film. Okay, we are in the running for this to be, we are in the running for this episode to be my favorite episode of the season. This is the making of my dance film. And based on the poll, we had just seen the solar eclipse. So this was obviously, when did the solar eclipse happen? When did the solar eclipse happen 2024? April 8th. 2024. So this was early April, like right after I'd finished filming the dance film, Caesar on a TV Screen, which is out now. Go watch it. This is in a running for my favorite episode of the podcast, and I take you behind the scenes and, you know, all these crazy things that were happening. Dude, it was such an easy shoot, and I think it's because, one, I did a really good job planning it, so pat on my back, but I also couldn't have done it without the amazing Anna Schnockenberg. She's just so talented and just really made the shoot a lot of fun. But yeah, this episode took us behind the scenes of Caesar on a TV Screen, and I just really enjoyed the, like, kind of reflection of this episode, and I now kind of have this, like, permanent time capsule of the behind-the-scenes experience of the film, and then I also have the hard copy of the film. So it was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed making this episode, and I actually show the dance film in class on Wednesday. It's Monday right now when I'm filming this. I show it as my final project on Wednesday. So unfortunately, I will have filmed this before we get the class's reaction on it. But I'm very, very excited to show it to my peers, and I think I know that I love it. I think they're gonna love it. I hope that they love it. But yeah, this is one of my favorite episodes from the season because it was such a big project and it was such an undertaking, and I really wanted this to be kind of my moment of, like, just make what you want to make, you know, like, I genuinely, like, I chose to make a dance film, and I strongly think that I talk about it in the episode. You know, I chose to make a dance film because, one, I do see myself working in film at some capacity at some point in my life. Even if it's just once, I would love to choreograph on a film. But also, I just wanted to see if I could do it. I just wanted to see if I could make a dance film, and I did successfully, and I really enjoyed the process, and I'm excited to do it again. I don't know when I'll do it again, but I'm very open to doing it again. So yeah, the making of my dance film is one of my favorite episodes of the season. Next is another investigative, more scripted episode. This is a half hour on strikes, and it is a half-hour episode on strikes. It's what's on the can, you know, it's all pretty much in the title, and I talked about both the WGA and SAG strikes, as well as the American Ballet Theater strikes that happened earlier this year, and just kind of a commentary on fair wages in the arts, the benefits of arts in society, why artists strike and why each strike is so important. And, you know, I think that strikes are empowering and they're important for the arts, and, you know, the industry changes and grows with each one. And, you know, obviously I would really hope that it doesn't come to striking, but usually that's the only way to get these major entertainment conglomerate corporations to listen. And I really filmed this episode and uploaded it and everything with a open heart and in solidarity for all the artists that have come before me, all the artists that will come after me, all the artists in my generation, and how they have continually fought and stood up for themselves and stood up for their arts and stood up for their peers, and how as a kind of one big family of artists, professional working artists, how we all can come together and fight for ourselves and fight for our friends and fight for the thing that we love and the thing that we put our heart and soul into, and the thing that we fight to keep alive every single day because it is important and it is critical to our humanity. And sure, it may seem like we have a chip on our shoulder, but we have to, you know. And in solidarity with these striking performers and the ones that have come before me and the ones that have come after me, and it just in solidarity with them, and as a love letter, a thank you note to what it did for my generation, you know, the generations that struck before me and the ones that will strike after me. You know, like, every step that every single performer takes benefits the performers all around the world as a whole. And this was kind of an educational episode, but also just a thank you note for all of the artists that have fought for the industry that I am going into. And it was just kind of, again, another thing that was kind of on my heart. Next episode, this is a crazy episode. What JoJo Siwa's rebrand means for dance teachers. That's so crazy. So by the time this comes out, this is going to be like late news. I mean, it was very happening. Like, it was what we were talking about. You know, when I was filming this, it's topical to when I was filming it. But by the time it comes out, it's gonna be super late news. But you know, there's a lot of discourse about it, and there's a lot of discourse about like shady things she's been doing, and if she's stealing music, or if she, you know, not stealing, but if she's buying music and then trying to take credit for it and not properly disclosing that. And then there's conversations about the mistreatment of the girl group XOMG Pop that she helped, you know, curate and run and everything. And a really big focus for me on this episode was what this rebrand means for dance teachers, because JoJo Siwa is something of a dance teacher, especially with this girl group XOMG Pop, which is really what the focus of this episode was. And this crazy Rolling Stone article was coming out, and everyone was talking about it, and, you know, she was being super abusive and, you know, harmful to these girls, and one of them, you know, had a chronic illness that she was absolutely not sensitive to, she was not kind about, she wasn't doing anything to help this child, and even though she was like chronically ill, and, you know, partially disabled, and all these things. And it's a crazy article, and I discussed it in the episode, but the big turning point was that, like, you know, JoJo has come from Dance Moms and all of that. I mean, the reunion just happened, you know, all of that abuse, and how it's a damaging thing for these dancers, and it, you know, that kind of abuse in the dance world sticks with you. I mean, what has happened to me sticks with me, and it, you know, it sticks with every dancer. And, you know, I really saw XOMG Pop as, you know, this was JoJo's moment this was her moment to take a stand and make the dance world safer and happier and healthier. And, you know, she could have flipped that cycle of abuse on its head, and unfortunately she chose not to do that and continued leading her students with the same abusive practices that she suffered through. And, I talk about it in the episode. Maybe she didn't see it as abuse, blah, 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 blah. But still, it's affecting the arts. It's affecting these children for way longer than you could ever know in that moment. And it was just really critical to me that I spoke on it as a dance teacher who makes it a point to show up to class healed and healthy, and I would never do the things that teachers did to me, to my students. And, this whole rebrand thing and what came out with Rolling Stone really impacted me, because I was like, this was your chance to do what we're all doing, which is do not step in front of students until you are healed, until you are stable, until you know what was wrong, and you know that you're not going to, revert back to that because that's what you know type thing. And, I was like, you're an adult, we're the same age, you're 20 years old. You've had time to heal, I've had time to heal. If I was able to do it, you, with all the money and resources in the world, absolutely could. And it was really disappointing to me to see her kind of take that same abusive route and, the abused become the abusers. And that was just something that was really sad for me to see. And I really thought it was, I really wanted to speak on it on the pod, even though by the time you get there, it'll be old news. But, it's an interesting angle because we are in the same industry. And it is an interesting angle as a dance teacher, what this rebrand really means and what it speaks on how we as dance teachers can better the industry. Next episode, finding your choreographic voice. This was a later addition to what I wanted to talk about on the podcast. I had this running list on my phone of topics for the season. Finding your choreographic voice is something that I really worked hard on this year. I'm in choreography 2. Last season I talked about being on choreography 1 and just kind of learning choreography, and in this year, my sophomore year of college, I did a lot more choreography. And, I'm really starting to step into what my choreographic voice is. And it is a journey. I talk about it a lot in this episode. It is a journey, and it's ever changing. And, I speak in this episode with both of my choreography pieces. They've been, completed in their forms. Maybe not the perfect form that I imagined them in, but they were completed, and lessons I learned doing each of my, big benchmark pieces for the year. And it was just really exciting. And finding your choreographic voice sounds so daunting, because at the beginning of the year, it was you're going to have to write an artist statement. And it's dude, who am I? But once you really settle in and realize that your choreographic voice lives and breathes with you, meaning it also lives and breathes and changes as you change, as you grow, as you develop. And that's kind of a freeing thing, because you're okay, what I do now reflects who I am at 20, but perhaps what I make at 75 is going to look wildly different. And that's okay, because 50 years have passed. I'm a wildly different person I am at 75 than I am at 20. And, that freedom in realizing, my choreography is allowed to change with me, and I'm allowed to experiment, and I'm allowed to make things that I don't like, and I should make things that I do and don't like, because I loved it at I loved it at the time, and it says something about who I was at the time. And your choreographic voice changes with you, and once you kind of get a grasp on that, sometimes it's hard to wrap your head around, dude, I totally get it, but once you get a grasp on that, it's freeing, because you're okay, let me just make what I love. And make what I love and let it speak for me. And you learn something with everything that you make. So finding your choreographic voice is a little bit daunting, but this episode has some tips and tricks on how to kind of develop it for yourself, and also just encouragement to let the pressure go a little bit. You're not making your magnum opus at 20 years old. Most likely you're not making your magnum opus at 20 years old. So it's a big episode for me. I really enjoyed that one. Next episode, ballet core and the sexualization of dance. This was a crazy episode. I wanted to talk about ballet core because I think as an aesthetic, I get what it's going for, but it is damaging to the perception of ballet. You know, it has that femininity and that grace of ballet, but it totally negates the hard work and dedication in athleticism that ballet has. Kind of critique the aesthetic. Let me wheel over here and get my water. Yeah, so in that episode, we kind of critique the aesthetic, and we kind of talk about the pros and cons of it, and we also get into the sexualization of dance, specifically in the realm of competition dance. Now, if you're a longtime listener, watcher, follower of the pod, you will know that I actually grew up in competition dance, and I did a 2-episode series in season 1 about how my competition upbringing and my later ballet-heavy upbringing, how those both impacted me as I worked towards my BFA. And the sexualization of specifically children in competition dance, both male and female presenting, we talk about in this episode because it is a rampant problem that, you know, you don't really notice when you're in it, but now that I'm out of it and I am choreographing for competitions, I'm seeing, you know, wildly inappropriate costumes and wickedly inappropriate song choices for children on these stages. And what does that mean for the future of the industry? What does that mean for the safety of the children? You know, you never really know who's in the audience. And, you know, it's an important topic, and I kind of wanted to give my 2 cents on it. So, ballet core and the sexualization of dance. Again, another more serious but educational episode. Next episode, a short and sweet one. What freshman year me needs to know. This is a riff on the episode I did, you know, because I started BFA Baby in my freshman year, so I talked about what my podcast self, what my high school self would need to know, because that was the year before, and this is now sophomore year Taylor reflecting on what freshman year Taylor needs to know. And, you know, it was a very hard semester for me. You know, I learned a lot, I grew a lot, and I used this episode as kind of a love letter specifically to freshman year Taylor, but also a love letter to the college BFA freshman. It's a crazy shift. It's such a crazy shift, and there's so many good college lessons in this episode, especially going into your freshman year, and this was just kind of a really sweet one, and I really think it's, if you are a college freshman or you're a high school senior or you're young, you know, about to get into college for your BFA, I would highly recommend what freshman year me needs to know. Next episode, a very special one, audiobook, chapters 3 and 4 of my debut novel. In season 1, I read you chapters 1 and 2 of my debut novel, Her Skin, His Bones, and I thought it would be fun to kind of bring it back for season 2 and read you a little bit more. You know, it was kind of my passion project this past summer, and I kind of may or may not have just started a new passion project for this upcoming summer. But yeah, this book was kind of my passion project for this summer, and it was a fun little novel that I wrote, and I love to share it. And I am objectively bad at reading as an audiobook narrator. I say in the video, but I will not be quitting my day job. But I do really enjoy sharing that story with you guys. It's very important to me, very close to my heart, and yeah, I'd love to see where the book goes. But yeah, I really, really did enjoy reading a little, you know, cosplaying as an audiobook narrator. Next is the longest episode in BFA Baby podcast history, clocking in at 2 hours, 10 minutes, and 42 seconds. Filmmaking, moving to New York, and Viking music with Larissa Zagaris. And this is a very special interview. This is one of my professors, Larissa. She is a grad student here at MSU about to move to New York, and she is just so amazing. She is so full of wisdom. She is so full of industry lessons. She is so intelligent. She is so talented. I love this woman, and I am so blessed to have her in my network on the podcast. She's just such a great reference point, and she's just so knowledgeable. She's so knowledgeable, and you know, she's done it. She holds 2 BFAs and an MFA. You know, she's done it. She's been where I've been, and she's been where you guys have been, and she's just such a great creative but also human inspiration, and she's just so emotionally intelligent and like industry intelligent. She's so talented, and we worked on a short film together, and we talk about this episode is so crazy. We talk about this episode, like, we talk about so much in this episode. We specifically talk about the Viking rock song, Put Your Back into the Oar. We talk about having a bedtime. We talk about my favorite piece of Larissa advice, which is watch stuff to learn stuff. And also my second favorite piece of Larissa advice, don't ever do drugs with your idols. Very important piece of Larissa advice, but just, it's such a big learning opportunity. It was a really, really fun episode to film. Next, we have inspiration and the times that the work feels like work. And, one more thing about the Larissa episode. You may notice that there is no video episode for that one, and Larissa was like, I'm not comfortable being on camera, and I was like, cool, that's one less thing I have to worry about. So there is no video episode for the Larissa interview, out of respect for what the guest wanted. But yeah, so that's just an audio only episode, so if you don't see it on the YouTube when it comes out, just a heads up, it is an audio only episode. But yeah, so back to inspiration and times that work feels like work. This was an episode where, you know, I think inspiration is so mystified, and it's like, where do artists get their inspiration? And obviously ties back to the tortured artist archetype. You know, you can tie a lot of things back to the tortured artist archetype, but you know, I kind of wanted to demystify inspiration and, you know, talk about, you know, I talk about a professional artist and what he's written about, where he finds inspiration. I talk about where I find my inspiration, and specifically things that aren't dance that inspire my dancing, because I think if you try to put yourself in one box looking for inspiration, you'll get very lost. So, you know, I kind of look to things that aren't dance for inspiration most of the time, but obviously dance and performance obviously impact me a lot. But yeah, and then times that the work feels like work. You know, they always say if you work a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I get the sentiment of it. You know, if you love your job, that's great, but you'll work more because you do love it so much and you do care about it, and that's so true for the arts. And I think with that sentiment that's so popular, and it's like, you're chasing your dream, why are you complaining about it? Like, you're doing your dream job. It's like, yeah, but it's okay that it still feels like work, because that's what it is. It is work, and that can be a really discouraging feeling, because you're like, this is my passion, and I'm chasing my dream, and I'm doing what I've always dreamt of, but it feels like work, and it's weighing down on me, and that's okay. And those feelings come and go, and I really wanted this episode to kind of just be like an auditory reminder that, like, there are times where the work is going to feel like work. There are times where it is going to feel like that, and it's not to discourage. Like, I don't really want that to be a discouragement, but just know that it doesn't make you less of an artist, or it doesn't mean that you've fallen out of love with your art, or that, you know, you're not passionate about it anymore. Like, it's okay that the work feels like work, and that was a really important lesson I wanted to get across, while also demystifying where inspiration comes from. You know, it's not always just like, I had a vision and then I made this masterpiece. It's like, sometimes it's just like, I saw a cool building and I made a dance about it. Like, I heard a song about a boat and I made a dance about it. You know, like, it's not as romantic as sometimes it can seem. And now the last episode of the season, bringing characters to life. This was fun. I talked about the difference of how I bring characters when I'm dancing and characters when I'm acting to life. I talk about how I got a callback for a play by doing a monologue from The Bear. So would highly recommend branching out. You know, if they ask for a contemporary monologue, look into TV, look into film, you know. Don't restrict yourself to plays if you're not explicitly told it has to be from a play. Just a little fun piece of advice for you. I'm still waiting on that cast list. So I don't know how it worked out yet, but just a fun little piece of advice. Don't restrict yourself to plays because you think that you have to, unless you're asked to. You can do more than that. You can branch out and be creative. But yeah, I talked about the differences of bringing characters to life. I talked about how some actors use perfume to kind of tap into their characters, and I very, 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 very briefly talk about the science of like scent memory, and that's like a big thing. So that's something I'm willing to try. But yeah, some tips and tricks of bringing characters to life. So it was really exciting. And that brings us to this episode, the season 2 recap, and perfect timing. I'm getting ready to close it out, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on this journey with me for another season of BFA Baby. This podcast started out as like a total passion project, and I'm really thrilled that it's kind of grown into what it is, and it's something that I'm very proud of and something that I'm, excited to speak on. And I just really, really love doing this podcast, and I love that you guys love it, and I cannot wait to start building season 3. So as always, respond to the poll, send me a DM, send me an email at bfababypodcast@gmail.com, send me a DM on Instagram, send me again in the polls, anything, what you want to see on season 3. I cannot wait to see where this podcast goes. I cannot wait to see how you guys react to this season. It's been such a labor of love, and I'm just really excited that we put out another season. Like, that's just so crazy. It's so cool, so crazy. Super excited that we put out another season. And of course, if you want to follow the journey, you can follow the podcast at BFA Baby Podcast on Instagram, or you can follow me at Tata's Ballet, periods between words. But until then, that's a wrap on season 2. I'll see you in the next one. Merit and a kiss. Mwah.